Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, coming at you today with something a bit different, something I'm very excited about. You know, over all the years I've made content for Final Fantasy, people always ask me what other RPGs I've played, and honestly, my list is probably a lot smaller than people would expect. You know, my childhood was filled with Final Fantasy XI, and the way that I convinced my parents to pay for that monthly was that we didn't rent games or buy games all that often, so I've skipped a lot of the classics and had to play them later in my life. That being said, one RPG has endlessly stood the test of time with me, and it's none other than Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. You know, I don't really know how I discovered this game. I feel like a lot of people know that about their favorite games, like, oh, I first saw this game then or played it then. Honestly, I don't even remember. It just feels like one of those fabled experiences that just fell into my lap at some point in my life. And quite frankly, I couldn't be more grateful. I may not like labeling a favorite game or favorite RPG of all time or even within the same year, but Super Mario RPG might just hold that spot if I were to really think about the individual games that have influenced me and stuck with me. Honestly, this one's really up there. I still play it pretty frequently, I'd say, over the years. Now, with the remake coming out November 17th, I just couldn't be more ecstatic. I just never thought I would see something like that in my life. I've already replayed through the game very recently with the crowd control mod. Basically, my chat could inflict debuffs, make me invincible, kill my whole team, you know, whatever floated their boat. Even through all the shenanigans, it felt as amazing as ever. So for those who don't know why us boomers are excited for the remake, let me break down a few things about the game for you. Super Mario RPG at its core is kind of like an RPG light. It's got traditional turn-based combat, a basic mana-like resource called Flower Points, and you defeat packs of enemies to gain experience and level up. It has a funny and lighthearted story, the humor with which has actually aged surprisingly well over the decades, and the game's difficulty, while not an absolute pushover, is reflective of that tone. But the game doesn't focus on super in-depth RPG game systems. It opts for simple and effective, I'd say. There are status effects, items, equipment, weaknesses, etc., but none of it requires much thought to understand, making the game really approachable to non-RPG vets. The key element to this game's timeless gameplay is, ironically, all in the timing. You can time your offensive hits and defensive blocks to increase outgoing damage or reduce incoming damage. Special attacks can require specific timing to achieve similar effects, or simply ask you to perform some other simple task, hold the button, tap the button repeatedly, things like that. So instead of in-depth game systems, it's more of an executional turn-based RPG. And somehow, despite doing this hundreds and thousands of times per playthrough, it manages to never get old. That's a shocker. I mean, there's very few game mechanics that don't wear down on a player after you've done it for 10, 20, 50, 100 hours. Not that this game will take you that long, but with the amount of times I've played it, I probably put that amount of time into it. It just feels so natural and rewarding to time everything every time. Not to mention that since you can actively avoid combat with proper movement and platforming, you're never just taking random encounters out of nowhere. So that probably helps the wear and tear a bit more because you're usually taking something on your terms unless you messed up a jump or something like that. The story, as I mentioned earlier, is also quite lighthearted, and yet there are several characters that do a whole lot with their very limited time on screen. It wastes no time creating scenarios for them that stick with the player, at least they've stuck with me, and it makes it hard to forget them even years between playthroughs. Super Mario RPG is also not that long of a game. As someone who's played it a lot, I can casually work through it in a single day, not doing any special tricks or speedrun antics or anything like that. So your average player might double that kind of experience, maybe 15 to 20 hours is a decent estimate to give for the game, at least for the original. Again, this just makes the game digestible for people who aren't big RPG players and don't want to pour, 30, 40, 50, 100 hours into an RPG like a lot of recent releases have kind of demanded of people. Now, all of that is swell and good, but with a remake, there's usually some apprehension. As excited as I initially was just seeing Super Mario RPG being acknowledged in the current year, I also have a lot of expectations, We all tend to say like, oh, it's going to be the greatest thing, or like we set these bars, and then it's almost impossible for anything to really match up to that. But that recent playthrough that I did, even with the crowd control mod, combined with what we know about Remake, I'm more optimistic than I would normally be in this type of scenario. Remake is pretty much faithfully recreating all of what I do remember and then adding more in. Timed hits being more transparent, a new limit break style gauge that charges faster with more subsequent timed hits, and even AoE splash damage on perfectly timed offensive strikes. They're just focusing on the thing that made the original so fun, those timed button presses, and making them even more rewarding and important to, well, nail down. Not to mention that they are even expanding on the original game's content, which I'm super grateful for. While the original does have some optional side quests and even a unique super boss, it's definitely not as expansive as RPG fans may expect or want. If you're someone who's been playing some of the RPGs that have come out even this year alone, Super Mario RPG does not even come close to that level of content as a whole. The remake is adding some stuff though, specifically rematches against the story bosses to really put some of that late game power you get into something that's more adequately challenging. This Welcome Edition means significantly more reason to chase down some of the game's most infamous equipment. And this isn't even everything, it seems. You can now swap party members in combat, access a bestiary with incredible enemy detail, and there may even be a more dangerous super boss available that wasn't in the original based on some statements about the game's development. Between all of this, the reimagined cutscenes, even some new and more expressive cutscenes, I mean, it just seems like one of those remakes that's going to completely honor the original and bring it onto, I guess, a whole new level of good. Not the best descriptor, but I think you know what I mean. It even has the classic OST option should you so desire, and boy, do I recommend giving that a listen, because that's another thing. You know, a lot of RPGs have good music. Again, Super Mario RPG music has stuck with me through the decades. In the end, I just wanted to make a video about something I was really excited about. On this channel, I regularly focus on stuff that's Final Fantasy based because it's what a lot of you subscribe for in the first place. But there are some things that I just feel an inherent need to talk about, an inherent need to kind of want people to experience as well. And Super Mario RPG, it's at the top of the list for me. You know, even if you weren't going to play the remake, you know, I would still be suggesting the original. And now that we have the remake, I probably won't have to do that anymore. I'm just really hoping that I come back now after I play remake and I'm telling you it was everything that I was hoping it would be. And yeah, that's the only reason I really wanted to make this video. So with that, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And if you're not sure if you're going to pick it up or you want to see more of the game, be sure to tune in. I'll be streaming it November 17th when it comes out. Although probably the 18th, because I think Nintendo games usually release in the evening and I stream in the morning. So either way, I'll be streaming it for release. So thank you for watching. I'll see all of you in the next one. And until then, take care.